guys, welcome to our coronavirus quarantine. I don't even know what to call it. Virtual learning, I guess. Sorry, this is Fritz. This is the puppy. I do apologize. Him and my other dog Owen are probably going to be in some of these lecture videos just because I can't really contain them. And it's either have them in the videos or hear them crying behind the screen. So thank you for your flexibility. I really appreciate it. So before we get going, as I said, I hope everybody's doing well and staying healthy and staying sane. We are going to talk a little bit about winter dreams. I do want to say I really enjoy listening to your Flipgrids and learning about your interpretations of the American dream. Obviously, doing the Flipgrids, you probably noticed how awkward it is to talk to an iPad, so bear with me. This is a lot different than talking to you guys in the classroom, so I'm feeling some of the awkwardness too. We'll be weathering the storm together, obviously. The other thing I want to clarify real fast, so when I was looking at your discussion boards, a lot of you mentioned that F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote the Star-Spangled Banner, which made me concerned. FYI, Francis Scott Key wrote the Star-Spangled Banner, but F. Scott Fitzgerald was named after Francis Scott Key. So I think that's where people got their wires crossed, but I just want to clarify. So let's talk about winter dreams. So we talked about this idea of what the American dream is, and Winter Dreams was actually first published in a literary magazine called Metropolitan in 1922. And it was later added to one of F. Scott Fitzgerald's first short story books, and that was in 1926. Now, The Great Gatsby was written in 1925, and there are going to be a lot of parallels that we see in this short story and the novel. So we'll start with the setting, which is in Black Bear, Minnesota, right? And one thing that you're going to notice in F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel is that he sees the Midwest as this place of innocence, okay? And we see this a little bit at the very beginning of Winter Dreams, right? Dexter's only 14 years old, Judy Jones is 11, okay? And all of these dreams are starting at a very young age for Dexter. And one of his biggest dreams is being in this golf tournament with T.A. Hedrick, right? And he illustrates this dream as beating him in this big golf tournament, but also having this like super nice car that Mortimer Jones, aka Judy Jones' dad, has, and that this car is so nice that even Mortimer Jones is jealous of it, okay? This is Dexter's dream. And then we start to learn that he has decided not to be a caddy anymore. We know that Dexter doesn't come from a really wealthy family, but he's pretty well off, right? It's not like he's caddying to earn money for his family. He's just being a caddy to earn money for himself, just some extra pocket change, right? His dad owns the second biggest grocery store in Black Bear. Okay, so again, he's more middle class than he is upper class, obviously. But he's surrounded by all these upper class people because he is the best caddy, right? According to Mortimer Jones, he never loses a ball. And what else is very interesting is Mortimer Jones, who's obviously a bigwig, knows or sees Dexter's potential, right? He notices how intelligent he is, how careful he is, honest, all of these good attributes for a man to come up the ranks, if you will. And what's even more ironic, even though he identifies that in Dexter, he's really bummed out when Dexter decides to quit caddying, which is even more interesting because that is because of Mortimer Jones's daughter, Judy Jones, okay? So Dexter explains to the audience that the impetus of him leaving caddying is this experience he has with Judy Jones, right? She's looking for a caddy. He says he can't caddy because the caddy director or whatever hasn't shown up yet. And then when the caddy director does, Judy Jones takes it upon herself to recruit Dexter as her caddy and even throws her golf clubs on the floor for Dexter to pick up. And Dexter is emotionally hurt by this, which is what causes him to leave, okay? But it also makes him realize that these bigger people, the wealthier people, is just someone for them to walk on, right? And that's what makes him leave. Now, the other thing that's interesting too, before he does this, he watches Judy Jones essentially abuse her nurse, right? She throws a golf club on her belly and she kind of looks at Dexter as if it's comedic. Don't eat those, okay? And he tries not to laugh because it's obvious that Judy Jones is entitled, right? And she's also learned how to use flattery to her advantage and how to use her beauty, which is something that obviously she learns to use later on that some of the older males recognize. So part one is kind of the early years, right, for Dexter, the caddy days, and him learning the ways of the world, right? This entitlement factor that the wealthy tend to have, according to Dexter. So in part two, we learn about what Dexter does next, right? His father is wealthy enough to afford a state college education for Dexter. But Dexter doesn't want that. Dexter wants to go to some of the oldest schools, okay, which are going to be your Ivy League schools like Princeton, okay? So he ends up going to these schools, and when he returns back to Black Bear, he ends up buying a partnership in a laundry company. And we learn too that he ends up selling his section of the laundry company and moving back to New York. But before we learn what brings him to that, we start to go into something in his past. So we're going to learn why he ends up selling the company. But from there, we see Dexter gaining this, what's the word I'm looking for, persona amongst the people that he used to caddy for, right? And everyone keeps saying, no, that's a boy, right? All these other guys Dexter's age are brokers or are actually working for other people to gain more money, but he's becoming a self-made man, right? He is buying this company himself. He's owning a partnership. And a lot of these men recognize that and give Dexter a lot of props for that. So he ends up being invited to go golf at the place he used to caddy. And not only that, he gets to golf with T.A. Hedricks, right? And what's interesting is this dream that he had, right? This amazing tournament that he was going to be in with Hedricks is kind of a cop-out. He plays Hedricks and he realizes he's really not that good of a golfer anymore. Then during this time that they're golfing together, lo and behold, who comes in then? Judy Jones, who ends up, getting a golf ball hit on Hedrick's belly. Okay, and Hedricks is PO'd about this. And once again, there's a little bit of comedy about it, but Judy Jones really hasn't changed that much, okay? She's learned to use her flattery to more of an advantage as she's gotten older. But the things that happen, she doesn't even apologize to Hedricks for kicking or getting him in the stomach with her ball. All she says is, oh, well, I said 4, right? As if that's an excuse enough, okay? There's no apology. There's no remorse with Judy Jones, which Dexter recognizes even in this instance. So as Judy Jones leaves and goes on her merry way, we hear Hedrick say that she needs to marry somebody in the military so she learns some discipline. And then we hear this other guy that they're playing golf with kind of goo goo gaga over Judy Jones because she's so beautiful. And Dexter's just kind of hanging out. So later on, Dexter is by the water. He's listening to the music, okay? He loves the acoustics of the music on the water. And this one song that is heard across the water reminds him of his sophomore year of college. And it's there that he's able to reflect on all the things that he's achieved. And he even says that all this glamour is in reach. And he says that it's probably the closest he'll ever be to glamour in his life. Okay, and as he's kind of soaking that all in and feeling the good vibes from achieving all of this, in comes Judy Jones on a motorboat, no less. Okay, so she comes up to Dexter and she asks Dexter to drive the boat. So we see this similar situation that happened in part 1, right? She throws her golf gloves and Dexter's expected to pick them up and haul them for Judy Jones. She drives up in her motorboat and she expects Dexter to drive it for her. But the thing is, Dexter does. So all of this stuff, all of his convictions as 14-year-old Dexter go through the window, sorry, with Judy Jones, okay? So she asks him to drive the boat for her and he does it, okay? So she goes on the back and she's motoring on her surfboard or whatever. And then she invites Dexter to dinner. So part 3 is when Dexter goes over to the Mortimer house, right? And he recognizes that Judy has been with multiple men. But he says that he's different from those men, that he is stronger and, what was the other word? Newer, okay, newer and stronger. Because as I said earlier, Dexter is a self-made man. And he gives himself that confidence, okay, going in to meet Judy. Now, what's interesting here is he does note too that the men that Judy has been dating are the same kind of men that he went to school with in maybe Princeton, whatever big East Coast school, right? And he says that even though he's newer and stronger, he wants his children to be like the men and women that he went to school, the men that he went to school with on the East Coast. So he doesn't want his children to live the same life he did. He wants his children to have the bigger, the better things. He wants them to have all the glamour and the glitter that Judy Jones seems to represent. So he's waiting for Judy Jones. She's already late. Surprise, surprise, right? And he's very overwhelmed when she comes down the stairs. He's expecting her to be overly dressed up and glamorous, and she's not, right? She's kind of in her hangout clothes, if you will. Then, to top it off, he's expecting a cocktail, he's expecting hors d'oeuvres, and she basically just says that dinner's going to be in the back porch in about 10 minutes. So again, all of these expectations that Dexter has about going on this first date with Judy are kind of undiminished, and he's left very underwhelmed. So Judy and Dexter end up talking, right? And she has this weird countenance about her, right? She's very up and down, which is also something that Dexter noted when he first saw her on the golf green. Well, I guess the second time he saw her on the golf green, right? He notices in her physical features, both the color of her cheeks and the way that her mouth moves, that she's always in flux, okay? Meaning she's always up and down. She's not consistent, right? And he mentions this passionate vitality attached to Judy Jones, which he also notices in part 1. So I bring up this word vitality because it's something that is connected very strongly with this idea of the American dream. And I also bring it up because we're going to see this word repeated a lot in The Great Gatsby. So I just want you to think about that for a minute or two, or later on when we get into The Great Gatsby. So she comes down, they're, hanging out, and he's noticing this flux again, right? She's first engaged with what he's saying, and then she starts to look sad, and he feels like he's boring her. So then finally she tells him the truth that, oh, poor Judy Jones has just learned that the man that she was in love with was as poor as a church mouse. Poor dear. So she's telling Dexter this, and she even says that she's loved men that were poor before, how big of her, and that she wouldn't have minded if he were poor. But the fact that he essentially lied to her is what really upset her, okay? That she was basically unguarded, okay, about him being poor. Which, again, is kind of ironic because Judy's not a terribly honest person, okay? We can infer that she's had multiple men around, okay, and hasn't been able to commit to anybody. So she's telling this to Dexter, and she asks if he's poor, which he's obviously not, and he's slightly arrogant in the way that he presents himself, but kind of rightfully so. And they start to kiss, and Dexter is overwhelmed, right? He finally feels like he's gotten the girl. And he even mentions that maybe that is what he's wanted all along, is Judy Jones. And maybe that was from day one that he saw her at the golf course, okay? That was supposed to be his impetus. That was the glittering thing that he wanted, okay? Because he mentions too in part 2 that he didn't want association with the glittering people or the glittering things. He wants the glittering things themselves, okay? And perhaps in this case, the glittering person being Judy Jones. And he says at the very end of section 3 that for the second time, Judy Jones has turned his life in a completely different direction. And that's where we're left until part 4. So, food for thought. I want you to read parts 4 through 6 for homework, okay? And we'll talk about what the American dream seems to be for Dexter and what Fitzgerald might be trying to convey about the American dream through this short story. But for now, I want you to leave your predictions on Flipgrid, okay? And then just, reply to one other classmate's prediction, whether you agree or disagree, or maybe you find it insightful and hadn't thought in that same direction, okay? So until tomorrow, be safe, be healthy. If you need anything, I'm here, okay? So till tomorrow, we'll talk again. Have a good one, guys.